I got a call from my wife, said I've sold and moved in with my new man. Hope you enjoy being homeless. That was the message I received while seated in a glass-walled boardroom high above the skyline of Bangkok, finalizing a strategic alliance that would net more than most people dream of earning in their lifetime. My name's Marcus Hale. I'm 45, and for the past decade, I've run a global logistics firm headquartered in downtown Denver. The voice on the other end of the call belonged to my wife of 12 years, Lana, and there was no sadness in her tone, no remorse, just cold confidence. Truth be told, Lana hadn't been herself for a while. She'd started guarding her phone like it contained launch codes. She suddenly became obsessed with evening Pilates classes that stretched far past what was reasonable. And then there were all those networking mixers that seemed to pop up every other night. I noticed, of course I did. But I'm not one to confront without evidence. I observe, I listen, I wait. Still, this call was different. It was nuclear. "Did you hear me, Marcus?" she said again, her voice sharp despite the faint static. "The loft is already sold. It's done. And Simon and I have a place in Cherry Creek. Much better area." Simon. So that was the name of the man she'd been slipping off to meet while I'd been circling the globe, closing deals and building the life she was now casually tearing down. I leaned back in my chair as the melodic chime of temple bells echoed across the evening skyline of Bangkok. At the other end of the polished conference table, my business partner Arjun was quietly flipping through the final pages of the contract, pretending not to have heard any of it. The irony wasn't lost on me. There I was, solidifying a deal that would secure our financial future for years to come, while back home, my wife was casually dismantling the life we'd spent over a decade building together. "You still there?" Lana's voice cut through the fading static with a trace of irritation, like she was annoyed I wasn't more rattled. "Aren't you going to say something?" I didn't yell. I didn't plead. That's not my style. Instead, I looked out at the skyline, rows of construction cranes climbing toward the clouds like ambition cast in steel. "I'm here," I said calmly. She laughed. Actually laughed. "Wait and see, Marcus. You're stuck in Thailand for another week. By the time you get back, we'll be gone. The place will be empty, and you'll be out on the street. Maybe next time you'll think twice before prioritizing business over your marriage." Then the line went dead. Arjun glanced up from his pages, his brow raised in quiet concern. "All good, brother?" I slid the phone into my briefcase and gave a small shrug. "Just my wife," I said. "She's been making some bold business decisions of her own." What Lana didn't realize was that I'd been making some moves of my own. 3 months earlier, when she started nudging me to sign off on paperwork to transfer the condo entirely into her name for supposed tax advantages, I got suspicious. Suspicious enough to hire a private attorney, cautious enough to quietly block the transfer. The condo? Still mine. Every square foot of it. I met Lana when I was 31 and she was 26. She worked for a boutique creative agency in downtown Austin, had this magnetic energy that seemed to shift the mood in any room. At the time, I was grinding around the clock, building my logistics startup out of a tiny co-working space, running on vending machine coffee and willpower. She said she admired the hustle, said she wanted to be part of the foundation, and for a while, she was. She helped design my early client decks, manage my calendar, even found the loft we eventually bought in South Congress. It was an old converted warehouse space with original brick walls and wide plank oak floors. We put 20% down and spent weekends sanding cabinets, painting trim, arguing over whether succulents counted as a real garden. My dad always told me, "Son, if someone's willing to build with you, don't let them go." I believed I'd found that person. But somewhere around year 10, the seams started to split. My business began to take off. That meant more investors, more clients, more flights. Lana said I was never around, but whenever I asked her to travel with me, she had a reason to stay. Her workload, her sister's drama, her barre instructor's new certification program. The excuses multiplied. So did the distance. And still, I stayed quiet, watching, listening, preparing. I began to notice the little things, the way Lana would step into the hallway every time her phone rang, how she'd come home from wine nights with her friends smelling like cologne I didn't wear, the charges on our joint credit card, trendy rooftop restaurants I'd never been to, showing up on nights she claimed to be stuck at the office. About 6 months ago, she brought up the condo paperwork again. Said her accountant suggested transferring the title solely into her name. Something about liability shielding in case my company ever got sued. It sounded plausible, but something didn't sit right. I've built a business by reading people, by catching the gaps between what's said and what's real. So I did what I always do when something feels off. I verified. I called my attorney. And sure enough, there were no real tax benefits to what Lana proposed. In fact, it could have made things messier if anything went wrong. When I told her I needed more time to review it, she snapped. Accused me of not trusting her. Said that after over a decade together, I should be able to sign a simple form without treating her like a stranger. That's when I knew, without doubt, that something was happening behind the scenes. So while I flew off to Southeast Asia to finalize our expansion deal, I had my lawyer quietly freeze the title. If Lana was planning a move, I wasn't about to make it easy. I'd learned the hard way in business. Always get the facts before signing anything. Turns out, marriage follows the same rulebook. The warning signs had been flashing for months. The text messages she'd hide as soon as I entered a room. The sudden shift in her wardrobe. Heels, lipstick, dresses she never wore for me. The vague talk about reinvention, second chances, and starting over. I should have asked questions sooner. Instead, I did what I do best. Watched, waited, and prepared for the fallout. Arjun and I wrapped up the Bangkok deal about 3 hours after that call. The contracts were signed, the champagne opened. Under normal circumstances, I'd have been elated. But that night I found myself alone in my hotel room, lights off, phone in hand, staring into the screen like it might offer answers I wasn't ready to admit. I called my attorney back in Austin. Vincent Ortega had been handling my legal affairs for the last 5 years. Sharp, meticulous, and completely discreet. 3 months earlier, when I'd asked him to quietly dig into the condo paperwork Lana was pushing, he hadn't missed a detail. "Marcus," he answered on the second ring, "just got word from my contact at the title company. Your wife tried to push through a sale this afternoon. She forged your signature on the transfer documents." Something heavy settled in my chest. Not quite shock, more like confirmation. The kind of truth that finally makes everything click into place. "How much?" I asked. "420. The buyers are real, young couple relocating from San Diego. They have no clue the seller doesn't actually own the place." I walked to the window of my 27th floor suite, overlooking the Chao Phraya River. The city pulsed beneath me. Boats navigating the dark waters, neon signs blinking against scaffolding and towers still under construction. Bangkok, a city built on bold bets, and the smart ones always knew how to play the long game. What are my options? I've already reported the fraud to the local authorities, the sale's frozen. The earnest money's locked in escrow. If she tries to push it further, she'll be stepping into federal wire fraud territory. I sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of 14 years pressing down like a stone. We'd been through so much. My dad's passing, her mother's health scares, multiple job shifts, and 2 painful miscarriages. I thought we were growing something lasting. But while I was building our future, she'd been sketching blueprints to tear it all down. "There's more," Vincent added. "I did some digging on this Simon guy. 2 ex-wives, both accused him of coercive financial behavior. He's currently over $40,000 behind on child support." I closed my eyes. Lana had always been intelligent but impulsive. She chased charm over character, bought into fantasies instead of facts. She trusted people who told her what she wanted to hear. I used to think my grounding nature complemented her spontaneity. Apparently, she saw it as an anchor, something to cut loose. "Vincent," I said, "I need you to take care of something." "Anything. Have the locks changed first thing tomorrow and start the divorce process. I want every piece of evidence documented, especially the attempted fraud." "You've got it. I'll handle everything." After I hung up, I sat in the hotel room with the lights off, staring into the dark. The betrayal hurt, but not in the way I'd expected. It wasn't the infidelity or even the attempt to steal from me. It was the calculation. The quiet months of deception while Lana kissed me goodbye at the airport, while she answered my check-in calls with warmth, knowing full well she was laying the groundwork to gut everything we'd built. But she made one critical mistake. She underestimated who she was dealing with. My flight touched down at Austin Bergstrom International just after 6:30 p.m., 2 days after that call from Thailand. I'd cut the Bangkok trip short and told Arjun I had a family emergency. He understood immediately. In his culture too, family takes precedence, even when they're the ones betraying you. The drive to South Congress took about 40 minutes with traffic. I spent it preparing for what I might walk into. Would Lana still be packing her things? Would the condo be stripped bare, along with our accounts? Or would she act like nothing had happened at all? Like that call was just a dramatic bluff? I pulled into the building's private parking garage at 7:15. Her white Lexus was still there. Parked beside it, a navy Subaru Outback I didn't recognize. I rode the elevator up to our floor. Through the window beside the front door, I could see boxes, stacked neatly. Lana moving between rooms, wrapping things we'd picked out together over the years. I stood outside for a minute, engine off, watching her pack away our life like it had all been a temporary lease. She looked different, lighter, somehow. Like she'd already shed the weight of our marriage and stepped into a role she'd been rehearsing for months. The security keypad was still the same. She hadn't expected me back yet. I walked in without knocking, and legally speaking, I had every right to. She was in the kitchen, carefully wrapping our stoneware newspaper. When she heard the door close, she looked up. For a second, just a second, I saw it. Fear. Then it vanished, replaced with casual indifference. "You're early," she said, not meeting my eyes. Flight got bumped. Then came the man, Simon, presumably. Younger than me, maybe late 30s. Smug in a way only someone oblivious to consequences could be. He had my old Texas Tech hoodie on, like he owned it. "Simon Carter?" he said with a rehearsed grin, holding out his hand. "Lana's told me a lot about you." I stared at his hand, didn't take it. "I bet she has." Lana put down the dish she was wrapping, finally facing me fully. "Marcus, this doesn't have to get messy. The sale's already moving forward. The buyers are a young couple, 2 kids relocating from California. School starts soon. Just sign the documents and let's all move on." "What documents?" She nodded toward the dining table. A manila folder sat perfectly aligned next to a ballpoint pen, like she was closing on a property she'd earned. Which, in her mind, I suppose she was. I walked over to the table and opened the folder. Transfer documents, every page filled out, typed neatly in Lana's handwriting. Everything was in place, except for one critical detail, my signature. She'd clearly learned her lesson from the last attempt. "You know," I said, calmly closing the folder, "I just spent a week overseas finalizing a deal worth more than this condo will ever be. You want to know the secret to a good negotiation?" Simon shifted where he stood. Lana crossed her arms like a kid waiting for detention to end. "Information," I continued, "knowing exactly what you're holding, what the other person's hiding, and what everyone actually wants." I pulled out my phone and brought up a text from Vincent Ortega, timestamped just 30 minutes earlier. "Fraud claim filed. Escrow frozen. Buyers notified of title conflict." Lana's face drained of color. "What did you do?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "I protected what's mine. Turns out you can't sell a property you don't own. And forging someone's signature? That's a felony." Simon began backing toward the hallway, like the air had suddenly turned toxic. "Hey man," he said, holding up a hand, "I had no idea. Lana told me you two had settled things. I wouldn't have gotten involved otherwise." "Simon!" Lana snapped, her voice sharp and pleading. "Don't walk away." But he was already reaching for his jacket. "Call me when this mess is cleared up." And just like that, he was gone. No goodbye, no loyalty, just gone. Lana turned toward me, her face red with rage now. "You son of a bitch! You just ruined everything." I shook my head quietly. "No, you did that the moment you decided to steal from me." Silence stretched between us as we stood in the kitchen, once the heart of our home. 14 years, and this was how it ended, her trying to rip it out from under me, and me catching her in the act. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. She leaned back against the counter, arms still crossed in that same defiant posture. "Does it even matter?" "It matters to me." She was quiet for a long beat. Then, with a hollow laugh, she said, "Fine, 2 years. It started 2 years ago, when you missed my birthday because you were in Singapore. When you chose an investor pitch over my sister's wedding. When you worked through Costa Rica like it was another boardroom. So your answer was to rob me blind?" I took what I deserved. "Do you have any idea how many nights I spent alone in this place, while you chased your empire? How many times I had to walk into events by myself because you were too busy or too important? I thought back to the events she'd mentioned, the nights I was on flights or in hotel rooms, trying to stay one step ahead of competitors. How many of those events were you actually alone for? She blinked, caught off guard. What's that supposed to mean? It means I hired a private investigator 3 months ago, Lana. I know about Simon. I know about the others. I know about the credit cards you opened under my name, the ones you used for hotel suites and candlelit dinners with men who weren't your husband. All the blood seemed to vanish from her face. You had me followed? No, I said calmly. I protected myself. The same way I protect my company, by knowing the truth before making any decisions that count. Lana stared at me like the floor had just dropped out from under her. You went behind my back, she said, voice shaking now, not with rage but with something closer to disbelief. No, I replied evenly. I finally stopped ignoring the obvious. You made your move, Lana. I made mine. She looked down at the counter, her facade beginning to crack. You really think I meant for it to end this way? I shrugged. I think you stopped caring how it ended a long time ago. She didn't respond. Outside, headlights swept across the living room wall, briefly illuminating the boxes, the life she had tried to steal, now frozen mid-theft. You were always gone, she said finally, a whisper. I was tired of waiting around to feel like your priority. You didn't want to be a priority, I said. You wanted ownership of everything I worked for, and when you couldn't get it through loyalty, you tried to take it through fraud. Her eyes welled up, but I didn't move. You can cry if you want, I said quietly, but don't pretend it's for us. We stopped being us the moment you typed my name onto legal documents and planned to sell this place out from under me. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg, but I was already turning away. I've contacted my attorney. The locks get changed tomorrow. I suggest you finish packing. Marcus? No, we're done here. She watched me, motionless, as I walked down the hall, away from her, from the lies, from the wreckage of a marriage that had rotted from the inside long before either of us admitted it. The truth was ugly, but it had finally come to light. Behind me, I could still feel her standing there, eyes burning into my back. But I didn't stop, didn't flinch. I walked into the office, closed the door, and let the silence reclaim the space. The condo felt colder than usual, stripped of all pretense, laid bare in the aftermath. Lana didn't say another word that night. I heard her moving quietly through the rooms, finishing her packing with the same precision she'd once used to organize surprise anniversary dinners. Only this time, she wasn't preparing a celebration. She was erasing herself. By midnight, her bags were lined up by the door. She left without a goodbye. I stayed up until 3 a.m., sitting at my desk with a single desk lamp glowing over a folder of legal documents, fraud filings, divorce papers, PI reports, proof of everything I didn't want to believe, but couldn't afford to ignore. She'd gambled on me being too distracted, too trusting, too late, but this time, I was ahead. By 8 a.m., Vincent arrived with the locksmith. By noon, the condo had a new security system, new codes, and surveillance installed at every point of entry. What Lana thought she could take had slipped from her fingers. What she never valued was now protected, locked down, mine. The first morning I woke up alone, it was quiet, but not empty. For the first time in years, it felt like peace, because now I knew the truth, and I had nothing left to lose, only everything to rebuild. I didn't say a word. I know you'll never forgive me, Lana said, her voice small now, stripped of all the arrogance it once carried. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was hurt. I made some terrible decisions. You didn't make a mistake, I said flatly. You made a plan. You tried to sell my home out from under me while I was working to build a future for both of us. That's not an accident, Lana. That's betrayal, plain and deliberate. She looked down, tears beginning to slide down her cheeks. Quiet ones, but they didn't move me. The divorce will be final in 6 months, I told her. Don't reach out to me again. I stood up and walked out of the cafe without looking back. That was the last time I saw her. I drove home to the condo, my condo. The call came on a crisp Tuesday morning in November, 6 months after I'd returned from Bangkok, to find Lana attempting to erase me from my own life. Detective Claire Mendez's voice was calm and professional. Mr. Hale, I wanted to inform you that Lana Price and Simon Carter were taken into custody this morning. Charges include grand larceny, wire fraud, and criminal conspiracy. The DA's office will be in contact about scheduling your testimony for trial. I was sitting in my home office, the same place I'd taken Lana's smug phone call that started this whole spiral. Outside my window, the Austin skyline glowed under the rising sun. The condo was silent. Still, it hadn't felt that peaceful in years. What changed? I asked. Last I heard, you were still building the case. Carter got careless, Mendez said. Turns out, Lana wasn't his first co-conspirator. He ran a similar play on two other women. One of them recorded everything. Calls, meetings, even a confession. We played those tapes for your ex-wife. She flipped and gave us everything we needed. The irony hit hard and deep. Lana had torched our marriage for a man who'd been running the exact same scam on other women the entire time. She thought she was chosen, special, the one. In the end, she was just another mark. The trial is set for February, Mendez continued. Are you willing to testify? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the skyline that had watched me rebuild my life. Absolutely. After I ended the call, I walked slowly through the condo Lana had tried to steal. The living room where we used to binge-watch shows on Sunday nights. The kitchen where she'd hosted wine-soaked dinners for my partners and smiled like everything was perfect. The bedroom where she slept beside me while quietly plotting to cut me out of my own life. The divorce had been finalized in October. Vincent Ortega had been right. The judge didn't take kindly to fraud. I kept the condo, the business, and the lion's share of the assets. Lana walked away with a few boxes and a criminal record. Through the grapevine, I'd heard she was working retail at a mid-range department store in El Paso, living in a small studio above a laundromat, trying to put her life back together, the same one she'd burned to the ground with her own greed. Simon Carter, according to Detective Mendez, was facing federal charges in 3 states for running similar scams, a long overdue reckoning. The phone buzzed again. Arjun calling from Thailand. My friend, he said, good news. The partnership is growing. We're opening a West Coast hub, and we want you to lead it. I stepped out onto the balcony, looking out over downtown Austin, the Colorado River shimmering in the distance. This city had shaped my career, held my rise and my fall, and now it would anchor my next chapter. I'm in, I told him. Send me the details. Spring came early to Austin that year. By March, the streets were lined with blooming redbuds, and the riverfront trails were alive with motion. I spent my mornings on the balcony Lana and I once designed together, now mine alone, drinking coffee, outlining my company's expansion into new markets. The trial wrapped in February. Guilty verdicts for both of them. Lana got 18 months in minimum security. Simon got 5 years in federal prison. Justice delivered. That chapter closed. I'd started seeing someone new. Her name was Claire, an architect I'd met through Arjun's wife. She was sharp, funny, and unbothered by long work hours or big ideas. She understood what it meant to build something meaningful and how rare that kind of loyalty was. Tonight, she was bringing Thai takeout and a blueprint for a lakeside cabin she wanted my opinion on. The condo felt different now. Brighter, lighter. I'd repainted the bedroom, got rid of the couch Lana picked out, installed smart lighting in the kitchen. Same bones, but it felt like mine for the first time. Fully mine. Business was booming. The Southeast Asia partnership had opened doors across the Pacific. Bigger clients, better deals, more control. But more importantly, I was working with people who valued trust and delivered it in return. Through it all, I'd learned something I'll never forget. Trust isn't given. It's earned. It's not about blind faith. It's about choosing the right people. People who build with you rather than scheme to tear you down. As the sun dipped below the Austin skyline, I leaned against the balcony rail and let the quiet wash over me. I was happier now, standing alone in a space I owned completely, than I ever was sharing it with someone plotting to take it from me. Lana's betrayal had cost her everything, but it gave me back myself. And sometimes the best revenge is surviving and thriving when they thought they'd destroyed you.